I want to take a minute and talk with you today about politics, specifically God and politics. We're in that season, again, every 4 years that we get into of electing another president, and we get into all these various debates and Republican versus Democrat, and it's crazy how often these things cause so much strife and disunity, and it only seems to be getting worse and worse and worse in the world we live in. I preached this very same series 4 years ago, and as I was reading back through the notes of this series, I'm thinking, oh man, this is exactly where we're at again, right? Where we were 4 years ago, we haven't grown, we haven't changed, we haven't gotten any better. If anything, we've probably gotten worse. And so I wanted to re-preach this series, a shorter version of this series that we did 4 years ago, and talk again about God and politics. This three-set series will come from 2 Kings 4 and 5, and so that's where we're going to be. But what I want to start off with is just trying to give us a little bit of a definition, I guess, of politics that I'm going to be working from as we talk about this. When I think of politics as being what it should be is part of that governing body, right, that we exist under, and that political system that we exist in or exist under, it should be there to help us achieve our goals. It should be there to provide us some structure and some stability. It should be there to help provide us some safety and some security. It's there to organize society, right? To keep society from falling apart and falling into chaos, to provide us that structure that we desperately need. We need structure. Whether we like it or not, we all need structure. Human beings need structure. In fact, all the way back in the beginning in Genesis, when God created Adam and Eve, He provided them with structure. He provided them with the very political system in which they were to exist, with Him being king and them existing under Him. And He provided the resources and the safety and the security that they needed. And all that was great until they stepped out from under that system, from that political system. So we have the idea of what it should be, but as human beings, we fail to use it as it's supposed to be used, and we fight and we bicker over how we should be functioning as a society, and we can't seem to agree on anything. We might agree on what the politics should be, but we certainly don't go about agreeing on how they should be functioning. So in 2 Kings, what's interesting, if you read through the story of 1 and 2 Kings, it's the telling of the consequences of what happened to the God's chosen people when they decided back in 1 Samuel chapter 8 to no longer have God as their king. They rejected God as their king in 1 Samuel 8. 1 and 2 Kings is the telling of the reality of that decision and the consequences in which they then had to suffer. So the world's politics in 1 and 2 Kings, it provides the structure, it provides order, it provides welfare, but it doesn't do it in the right way. If you look at the world's politics closely in 2 Kings, you'll see that the political systems of the day provided those things through fear, through war, through intimidation, through power, right? They took advantage of other people, they defeated other people, they provided their people with safety and security by scaring everybody that threatened that, and by even scaring into submission the people that were living within that system. And it left itself in chaos because with every king, the vision changed. Every king brought a new agenda. Every king brought a new system in which they had to figure out how to exist. And it led to division. A kingdom, a people that God had chosen to be His very own, came into this united. And as you get through the story in 1 and 2 Kings, they ended up becoming a very dysfunctional, disunited group of people. Disunity prevailed, and the kingdom divided into the north and the south. And if we stick to that storyline in our life today, then we're left with a political system that leaves us frustrated, angry, and bickering and fighting amongst ourselves. It seems to me that we've stuck to that storyline, that we haven't got past, even today, 1 Samuel chapter 8, of rejecting God as king. We only have security if our king is largest and the wealthiest, if our system is the strongest and most powerful. We only have welfare if we are the wealthiest group of people in the world. Our trust in the world system is always changing. In fact, we don't trust it anymore. We don't trust our politicians. We don't trust our leaders. We don't trust our government. So what does that say about us? That the very system in which we're placing our hope and our trust to provide for us our safety and security, we don't actually trust. And we don't actually believe can provide those things for us. It's so messed up when we start to look at that and think about it. But nestled within this story, nestled within this history of how God's people experienced a rejection of his system in favor of the world system, there's this story in 2 Kings chapter 4 about this Shunamite woman. And in this story, we're given a glimpse of what it would look like for us to exist in a world system, to exist in the world, but put our faith and our hope in God's system. Right? We have a choice today. We don't have to put our faith and our hope in a system we don't actually trust. We have another option, and we especially need to be declaring that other option loudly and boldly as followers of Christ. So go with me to 2 Kings chapter 4. We're going to start in verse 8, and there's this story of this Shunamite woman. Now this woman, it says in verse 8 that she was a prominent woman, and so she was a woman of great wealth. She was a woman of great resources. Now Elisha was a prophet, a holy man of God, who was coming through her town very often. And so as often as he passed by, he would stop there and she would provide him with something to eat. And she took good care of him. She even went to the extent of building him a house, a guest house, there at her house. So she built him a guest house so that he would have some place to stay every time that they came by. So he came by, he would get fed, he'd have a place to eat, and he wanted to show her some appreciation. He wanted to thank her for all that she had been doing. And so because of her generosity, this is what she did, or he did. It says that he went and he asked for the Shunamite woman to come to him, and he said, I want to give you, or make for you a good word, put in a good word for you, for the king or the commander of the army. That's what I'd like to do for you. And so probably what Elisha is thinking is he was looking out for her welfare. She had been looking out for his. And now he was going to look out for hers. So in this culture, if you lost a husband and didn't have a son, you would have no one to take care of you. Well, this woman didn't have a son and she had a husband, but if anything happened to him, she would lose it all. So Elisha is saying, if I put in a good word for you with the king or with the commander of the army, then they'll take care of you if your husband dies. Her response to that is, no, thank you. I live with my own people. In other words, what she is saying is, I don't need any political favors. I don't trust the king or the commander of the army. I don't trust their system. I'm going to be with my own people. I'm going to trust that my people will take care of me. I'm going to put my hope and my faith in the God of Israel to take care of me. I don't need any political favors. So Elisha says to her servant, what can I do for her then? If she's not going to let me put in a good word for her, then what can I do for her? And the servant tells Elisha, well, she doesn't have a son. And so Elisha says, well, then she's going to have a son. And so he promises her a son. And sure enough, as we know in the stories of Elisha, he's able to work all kinds of miracles through the power of God. So Elisha promises her a son, and then she has a son, and she has a son that grows old enough to help his father in the fields. This is exactly what she needs. Because now if something happens to her husband, her son can take care of her. That's how it would work during this time. But then what happens is the son gets sick and the son dies. And so the Shunamite woman actually runs to Elisha, finds Elisha, and brings Elisha back to her dead son. He's actually dead. He's not just sick, he's dead. But her hope was not lost. If you and I have a loved one that passes away, we probably aren't going to run to somebody and expect them to bring them back to life. But what impresses me about this Shunamite woman is she had put so much faith and hope in God's system that God was going to take care of her, that she went to Elijah believing that Elijah, through the power of God, would be able to do something for her child. She did not trust the world system. She lived in it, but she didn't let that system dictate her beliefs or dictate her life. She let God's system do that. What a challenge for us. What a challenge for us. We have to do the same thing today. We live within a political system that's broken. We live within a political system that we don't trust. We live within a political system that we get angry and fight about all the time. But that's not the system that we have to put our faith and our hope in. That's not the system that we have to trust. And that's not the system that should be defining our lives or dictating our beliefs. And that's what scares me the most about the church in America today, is I feel like sometimes we've allowed the political system in the world to influence the church more than the church influencing that system, right? We get to the point where we almost believe that if you're going to be a Christian, you have to be a Republican, or if you're going to be a Christian, you have to be a Democrat. We can't even agree on which political party we have to align ourselves with if we're Christian. And then that political party ends up influencing our Christian beliefs and values, to the point where I question some of our beliefs and our values. Are they actually Christ-like, or are they more Republican, or are they more Democrat? But this woman, this Shunamite woman, found a way to exist in this political system without it defining her beliefs and her values. She held on to God's system, which led her to believe that Elisha could do something to save her son. So she ran to get Elisha. And when Elisha comes back, Elisha brings her son back to life. That's awesome. It's an amazing story. And so her son lives. This Shunamite woman trusted in God's system, and God provided her in ways that the other system couldn't. Had she been trusting in the system of the world, in the political system of that time, her son would still be dead. She wouldn't even have a son because that system could not give her one. Are we looking to the political system of our day to provide us things that it cannot provide us? Are we looking to our political system as our redemption and our Savior when we should be looking to Jesus to be our redemption and our Savior? When we look at the political system of the world, are we expecting the president and congressmen and senators to do things for us that honestly we should be looking to God to do? Like, where's our hope and our expectations? This woman looked to God and to Elisha to bring her a son and to bring her son healing. We have got to make sure that we are making the right choice, and that we are focusing on the right system, on the right person to provide us the things that we need. Because let's be honest, there are things in this life that our political system in the United States of America cannot provide for us today. Only God can provide that for us. So as we get into this election season, let's make sure that we are putting our expectations in the right places. Let's make sure that we're putting our focus in the right places. Let's make sure that we are trusting the right political system. Are we trusting God's politics or the world's? And I hope and pray that all of us trust in God's politics before we trust in the world's politics.